Hello everyone, Triumph and Strategy, and today we will see how to play without reading this. My friend Joe and I, when we wanted to play to this game, we went to the rule of play and we feels like, oof, it's tough. Actually, Board Game Geek said the difficulty of this game has medium, but I have to say that this manual doesn't make it easier. Anyway, when you get familiar with the game loop, everything goes very smooth. So the objective of this video is to give you all the information to sit and start to play quickly. This is a high tactical simulation game that uses cards and is set in the Second World War. The game is made for 3 players, the Western countries, the Axis of course, and the Russian. There are 3 ways to win this game, with economical hegemony, conquering 2 strategical main capital of the whole world, or developing the nuclear bomb. Let's begin from the game map, because understanding the board map means understand already half of the game. The map is colorful and helps to understand the territory of each faction at the beginning of the game. Red Russian, of course, blue and green the Western countries, and gray the Germans. The other countries are considered minor power or neutral countries. The board is designed with several key helper boxes, here, here and here. They helps a lot during the game. Okay, let's start with Axis faction progress bar. Starting value for resources, population and industrial. They can move during the game. Summary of the unit, their movement and their combat power. Different combat power versus different kind of unit. Cost to increase industrial production, hand size limit, and status of war with West or Russia. This bar is similar for each faction. Western progress bar, Soviet Union progress bar. Industrial production, population and resources, they are crucial elements because determine the number of resource points that each faction can spend for acquiring new cards, new units and upgrade the units. Now, let's move on the sides of the city. The sides of the city impacts the number of resources it provides to the faction and its defensive power. This city is considered a town, no population, but 1 fortress. A fortress with power 1. Ankara is a bigger city, 1 population, and a fortress with power 3. This box summary the resources. For instance, here we have 1 resources and 1 Trans-Africa resources, so 2 in Iraq. Borders and natural obstacles impose movement restriction. Mountains, rivers and straits strongly affect in wartime the strategic decision, because they limit the number of units that can cross each phase. Normal border, mountain border and river border. 2 units, 3 units, 1 unit. And here another important helper box. Game phases inside 1 turn. So new year, production, government, and then the movement phase. Spring, summer, blockade, check blockade, and fall. And then the last, winter. The winter phase is played only by Russia. As last, game turn progress bar. Simply looking at the game board, we already cover half of the rule of this game. Now, what is left? We need to talk about unit, how the unit move, how the unit combat, and the card. And the last thing will be the game loop. First thing first, these are all the tokens and unit of the Soviet Union faction. This one is the set of the Axis faction. And this, the complete set of Western faction tokens and units. And then we have the neutral tokens marker. These are the units. For instance, this is a unit, this is a unit, and this is another unit. So we have 7 types of units: fortress, tank, infantry, airplane, fleet, submarine, and carrier. The dot on each unit indicate the combat value of the unit. Before looking closer to some of the unit, it is important to know that combat value 1 means 1d6 to roll during combat. This fleet has combat value CV 2. This carrier has combat value 1. This infantry has combat value 2. This plane has combat value 3. This infantry combat value 3. And this submarine combat value 1. This is Western countries unit and marker, white tricolor. This is Britain, this is France, and this is US. Moreover, the color of the units match the color of the country they come from. British blue, France light blue, and green for the United States. And now is a good time to take a look at a combat example. For instance, US forces are attacking Soviet Union forces. US forces, they have plane, tank, and infantry. 1 combat value, 3 combat value, 3 combat value. Instead, Soviet Union has a fortress, tank, and infantry. 1 combat value, 3 combat value, 2 combat value. So the defender goes first with the fortress and decide to target the infantry. Shoot 1 dice and hit with 4 or less. 2. Hit. So this infantry go down 2. Second, air forces. So this plane from the US attack and he decide to target the infantry unit. So ground unit hit only with 1. No, misses. Then no carrier, submarine, no submarine, no fleet, tank. There are tank. There is 1 tank here, 1 tank here. This tank is a defender, so attack first is 3 combat value, so 3 dice, and he decide to target the infantry. Hit with 2 or less. Only 1 hit. So the infantry goes down to 1. Now is the turn of the attacker. They decide to attack infantry also. Same, 1 hit. Then there is the infantry. The defender infantry goes first. Only 1 dice. Decide to attack the infantry also and hit with 3 or less. 3 hit. So this infantry is destroyed. So the infantry of the attacker has no chance to attack. And here, how a combat phase is resolved. Important to remember, there is only 1 combat phase per season for ground units. The sea battles, instead, are always fought to the conclusion, which means until one side is eliminated or retreats. On the movement of the units, movement by land and by sea are the same, with a few remarks. 1 movement is equivalent to 1 territory. Move from 1 territory to another territory costs 1 movement, apart this area, which costs 2 movements. Traveling from Rome to North Africa costs 4 movements. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's look at the card. There are 2 decks. The back is the same. This one are called investment card, and this is are called action card. Action cards are used to move troops and gain diplomatic influence over other nations. Investment cards are used to increase industrial production or acquire technologies. For instance, to get a new weapon, the player needs to match and play 2 investment cards with the same technology. Here, heavy bomber, sonar technology, and atomic research, which contribute to achieving one of the victory conditions. Action card instead shows in which season and how many units can be moved, here in the center of the card. And at the top and the bottom of the card there are two possible diplomatic actions to gain diplomatic influence on a neutral nation. 3 influence markers make a neutral nation a satellite country of the faction. One last step before you and your friends can get your feet under the table and start playing. Every faction has an helper sheet, and this is the only thing that you really need to master to be able to play. They have even a back with the summary of each single unit, what they can do, how they move, how they fight. So let's look closely to this sheet. Every sheet is divided in several sections. First section, how to set up your gameplay. Second, special rule. The same for Axis and the same for Russia. So this is the first thing to read and learn. Then there is the sequence of play, which is the same for every faction. Well, the sequence of play begins with the New Year's Eve procedure and start by distributing peace dividends, then calculating victory points, and the order of play. Next comes the production phase, in which each player, based on the order of play, receives and spends production points to acquire action cards, investment cards, new units, or upgrade units. Here, important to recall that the production points are calculated in peacetime considering the list of industrial production value and population of the faction. In wartime, the value of the resources is also taken into account. Then comes the government phase, in which the players play cards to perform diplomatic, industrial, and technological initiative. This phase is played until the faction comply to the hand size limit. This might be a quite long phase. As last comes the 4 seasons, where the players play command cards, move the units, and resolve battles. In wartime, each season ends with a supply phase, during which ground unit, tank and infantry basically, without a supply line suffer penalties. And in summer only are declared blockades, which can affect enemy production in the next year. The turn ends with the winter season and is reserved for the Soviet Union, which can move and fight battle only in the Soviet territories. That's all you need. Just remember the units are placed upright, facing the owner, and they remain hidden during the movement, during the upgrade, and when new units are built. Through the game, you are flipping them face up, face down, upright, multiple times. And this may be a little bit of a flaw for the game, especially when the table is crowded of units. It's easy accidentally flip a unit from 2 CV to 1 CV or vice versa without realizing. The game designer, they actually understood it, and they add a note at page 12 of the rulebook. Players are responsible for moving their units correctly. The unit's type is not revealed in any way. If you have questions about an opponent's honesty, you are playing the wrong game with the wrong person. The crash course is complete. I hope this video has been helpful. I wish I had a video like this when I get into this game. It would have made the things much easier. But since we have come this far, let's take a quick look to the remaining section of the faction helper sheet. The third box here, in order of importance, is the combat phase. Actually, this one is too long for me. It's much more easy than this. Reading this box is also even confusing, in my opinion. You just need to remember what is written here. Fortress goes first, second the air forces, Then carrier, submarine, fleet, tank, infantry go last. Convoy, basically they don't fight, they just take hits. Then there are this additional box, quite interesting. This box tells if a faction can take resource from friendly, neutral, rival or enemy territory, or can get supply line. This box reminds the type of influence on other countries, associate 1 marker, protectorate 2 marker, and satellite 3 marker, which are substituted with this one. And what kind of benefit a faction can take from associate, protectorate, and satellite. The last box is a reminder for the technology effect. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. If you like the video and you want to see more video like this, please subscribe. Ciao!